guys, how's everyone doing? Hope everyone had a blessed week. If you're there on Instagram, Renee set me up. I'll be able to see who's coming in shortly. But take this time as we wait for the stragglers to come in. You see there's a little, it almost looks like the front of a plane. If you click that, share it with your friends, your families. This is our part 2. 2 weeks ago, we did Are You Vulnerable to an Affair? And we saw that there are social factors that we need to be aware of so that we're not blindsided. Well, today we're going to see another factor in the vulnerability. And today it's the relational factor, okay? And there's one more, which is going to be a part 3, but I want to make sure that you watch all parts so that you are safeguarded against any type of affair in your relationship. So I'm going to give it a few more minutes as you guys come in here. Grab your papers and your pens, as I always say. And if you were with us last week, we talked about cardboard dreams, right? I've been skipping around with you guys, but we talked cardboard dreams. And so if you were there and you've already done your cardboard dreams, for those of you who sent your email, so that you could get the worksheet, awesome, right? I hope it was helpful for you. And send me your cardboard dreams. Take a picture, take a selfie, send it my way. I would love to share it with our abundant marriage family. Okay, so keep sharing. I'm going to keep talking. And for those of you who are joining us, and maybe this is your first time joining our live, my name's Amanda, and what I am passionate about doing is transforming, rerouting mediocre marriages into abundant marriages. And so mediocre marriages are the marriages that it's lukewarm. Maybe you guys are like roommates, maybe there's an invisible divorce that's already taking place. Or honestly, maybe you guys just don't really have much to talk about. You guys don't enjoy each other's company anymore. You're just together to sort of pay the bills. But then there's the abundant marriage. And this is the type of marriage that is available to all of us. A marriage where two people are best friends, where they're just rooting for each other. They're each other's cheerleaders. They share each other's dreams and fears. And that's an abundant marriage. And so the family that we are building, the community, the keystone community that we're building here are individuals, husbands and wives, ordinary people, but trying to live out an abundant and extraordinary marriage. And so before we get to it, I want to say a few words here by Dr. Shirley Glass. She passed away already, but she did incredible research on infidelity. She's known as the godmother of infidelity. I mean, research upon research upon research. You're going to hear me using her name often when we talk this topic because she's the real deal. And she wrote a book, if you're interested, it's called Not Just Friends. You can get it there on Amazon. And she's the one who spoke about these different factors of making us vulnerable to an affair. And so last time we covered social factors. Today we'll cover relational factors. And in a few weeks we'll cover the individual factors. And so she says this. I took an excerpt from her book. And look at what she says when talking about the marital factors, the relational factors. She goes, in no way is this an exhaustive list of marital patterns which increase marital vulnerabilities. Today I'm going to show you, I think it's 7 different marital patterns, relational patterns, that make you more susceptible to an affair, more vulnerable, but it's not an exhaustive list, as Dr. Glass says. She says that as we move forward, as you start to figure out all of these factors, like any marriage, there's always room for improvement. This week I posed a question and it said, are you committed to an abundant marriage? And there are tons of people who answered, yes, I'm committed. And then when I took it one step further and I said, well, how are you committed? And then everyone was like deer caught in headlights. Because although we are quick to say, sure, we're committed, but then when I asked for tangible ways, everyone was thinking, well, I don't know what those tangible ways are. Well, we need to know. You see, because our marriages, all of our marriages, have room to improve, but we need to be intentional about improving it every single day. The Bible tells a story of when the children of Israel, when they were in the desert, that God would feed them with manna. Manna is known as, the food of angels. It tastes like honey bread. And every single morning, the manna would fall from heaven, and the Israelites were supposed to gather and fill their jar, and it would last them only till that day. If they got extra, it would spoil. They were to get only enough for that specific day, and tomorrow they were to wake up early again and gather the manna for that day. That's exactly how our relationship works. What you did yesterday or last week or last month or last year, it's not enough. Every single day, we need to make sure that we are collecting manna to feed our marriage, okay? But I also want you to be aware that as I go through these marital patterns, if you catch yourself in one of these, I don't want you to panic. I don't want you to freak out, because here's the thing. Your marriage is not doomed, and none of these issues or these patterns are excuses to leave your marriage. Remember, there's 3 different factors. This is 1/3, meaning that we need to look at all of them to safeguard our marriage. And here's the thing. Unfortunately, it seems to be the case that couples will seek help when they're already, the house is burning down. We want to make sure that we also use preventative measures with our marriage, okay? So before we get into the patterns, I just want to be clear that marriage is neither cause nor excuse infidelity, okay? In the end of the day, there are 2 people in unstable marriages or marriages that are mediocre, and typically only one of them is being unfaithful, which shows us then that it is a choice. That there are people who are in happy marriages who cheat, and there are people who are in unhappy marriages who cheat. Now, in the end, as I did last time, I am going to give you guys a little quiz. And you will take the quiz in the end. You can take it individually, right? This quiz. And I want you to see there, where are your vulnerabilities. Maybe you ranked higher on relational vulnerabilities than you did on social factors. This is all going to be information to help you. So make sure that you watch all 3 parts. Again, today is part 2. So here we go. What are one of the relational or marital patterns that make you more susceptible to having an affair, making you more vulnerable? The first one is the child-centered marriage. Now look, I get it. Kids are cute and they're cuddly and they're nice and they don't talk back until a certain age, right? And so at times it becomes an easy win over choosing your children over your husband or over your wife. Women, we typically get in trouble more so than the men with this part. But I want to remind you guys that the pattern that God has left us in the Bible is the best pattern. And Genesis tells us that man and women, that they leave father and mother, and that united they become one flesh. Notice that they are not one flesh with their children. They are one flesh with each other. But here's the thing. In the beginning of a relationship, when they're engaged and then when you get married, you have all the time in the world and you are constantly investing into each other. There's no interference. But as soon as children come in, well, new roles are being established. Not only are you husband and wife, but now you're mom and dad. And children really come to test your bond. And the other day, Renee said, man, we never argued as much before River and Reed. And truly, that's the case. You know why? Because the house is messier, and Renee and I are more tired, and we're stretched. And sometimes when River and Reed are crying or they're fighting, it drives us insane. It drives us crazy. So truly, when children come to your marriage, which is why I tell couples to wait at least 5 years of marriage so that you can nurture your relationship, your marital subsystem before you become parents, okay? 5 years is sort of the minimum there. And so I want to make a distinction to you guys. I want it to be ever so clear that family and marriage are not the same thing, okay? Here's what I mean. Families represent both the marital subsystem and the parental subsystem, right? You are husband and wife, and you are also mom and dad. And these two entities are, while they are together, right? They sort of operate together, sometimes in parallel. They need to be distinct as well. There will never be a strong marriage if you are not being intentional about filling your spouse's love tank. I want you to think about it like this. How are your children's love tank? That's a specific category. And then how is your spouse's love tank? We cannot simply invest only in our children and neglect our marital subsystem. Does that make sense? And what happens a lot of time is that the husband, more so than the wife, the husband feels neglected. You know, I had a wife tell me that she never really even thought about marriage. All she thought about was having kids. You know, she goes, for me, I mean, I could even get a sperm donor for all I care. So when children came along, of course, she was getting all of her affection and her love and her care and her cuddles from her children. And what happened? Husband got neglected and he ended up cheating. Now, again, as I said in the beginning, he did not have an excuse. It's not justifiable that he went and got an affair. But as you can see, it gave him room for vulnerability. But in the end of the day, are there other husbands out there whose wife is sort of neglecting because of children? Yes, and they have not cheated. Does that make sense? But we are talking here about vulnerabilities and making sure that we safeguard each other. As Renee's wife, I want to protect him. And as my husband, Renee wants to protect me because we are on the same team. So plan trips together, just the two of you. Renee and I are pretty good at this. And granted, look, we're pretty spoiled, okay? We have his parents' help. We have my parents' help. I mean, they live here on the ranch with us. So anytime we want to get away, it's easy for us to do that. So I get that at times it can be challenging. But even if it's to do a picnic in the backyard, do things together without your children. And try your hardest that when you are there, you might notice that you have nothing to talk about except for your children. And that is a problem. So find hobbies, find things that you guys can do together so that is children going to be part of the conversation? Sure, but they can't be the only part of the conversation because you know what happens? Sooner or later, children are going to leave. And if you have not fed into your marriage, you're going to look at each other and say, well, now that the children are gone, what is left? And you're going to unfortunately find that nothing is left. So the best thing you can do for your children is to love each other. You know, for my birthday, it was a few months back in June, Renee and I planned a whole trip. And my mom was like, are you going to take River and Reed? And he says, absolutely not. You know, and so we spent the whole day together, just the two of us. And it was awesome. We went paddleboarding, you know, and for his birthday, we did something. And we try to plan at least 1 or 2 trips in the year, like long, big trips, big vacations, just the two of us. And we're pretty good at this. We love to put the boys to sleep early. Okay, so River and Reed are sleeping about 7:30, 7:45 max, and it gives us time in the evening to just wind down and spend time with each other. And in the morning, we make it a habit to walk together, to work out together, to once again spend time, just the two of us, without River and Reed. I love them to death, but I also love their dad. I love their husband, and I need to make sure that our relationship is good, because if we're good, they're going to feel it. They need to sense that mom and dad love each other, you know, not just because of them, but, you know, even with if they didn't, before they existed, or even if they didn't exist, we love each other. All right, so that's the first vulnerable marital pattern, is the child-centered marriage. Let's go to the next one. It's the parental crisis. Parental crisis. Okay, this is a big one. So this is when parents have difficulties on how they are going to discipline their children. one of the things that my parents did very well for my brother and I, as whenever they disagreed with each other, they did it behind closed doors. My mother never took away my father's authority in front of us, and my father never did it for my mother. Sometimes if they were really disagreeing on something, mom or dad would say, hey, can we talk in the other room, right? And we knew something was going on, but we didn't know all the details. They were very good at sort of hashing it out behind closed doors. Oftentimes, it seems that I'll have couples come and the kid will go to mom and mom will say one thing, and then the kid will go to dad and dad will say another thing, and it almost becomes a mom and kid versus dad, or a dad and kid versus mom. This is not at all how it should be. This is parental crisis. You mom, you dad, you guys are in a team between husband and wife. This is the subsystem that needs to be in place first. This is the foundation of your family. And so whenever there's disagreements or differences in discipline, contempt starts to come in. And if you've watched the video about the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, I hope you watched it. These are 4 communicating styles that will lead to divorce. Look, I'm saying it will lead to divorce. Contempt being number 1. Why? Because when you treat each other, when you speak to each other in contempt, it's the eye rolls, it's the mocking, it's the disrespect, it's literally just a disregard for the other person. And no one is going to stay in a relationship like that. We need to cultivate a relationship, a marriage, parents as love and respect. We can disagree, sure. There are things that Renee were taught from his parents that I don't agree with, and there are things that I were taught from my parents that Renee doesn't agree with. And so in our new family and disciplining our children, I do things similar to my mom and dad, but I also do things different from them. And Renee and I, we're sort of navigating how we are going to parent. But contempt needs to be far away from this conversation. Don't let differences in the parental subsystem make you vulnerable to inappropriate outside support. When you're upset or you're fighting with your wife or you're fighting with your husband, and you take it to work and you start to talk to the friend at work and you say, oh, my wife this, or oh, my... Don't... I recently did, I think it was a video about this. Don't bad mouth your spouse to anyone. I don't care if it's your family. I don't care if it's your friend. Do not bad mouth your spouse to anyone. If you want to have a conversation, take it to the Lord in prayer. Find a therapist. Find someone that is going to give you professional help. Okay? I'll share this with you. And look, it even happens at times, during sessions. I once had a husband, and he was talking to me about his wife, and this is why I say it's important that you have boundaries and that you seek a professional to help you, a Christian counselor to help you navigate these things. If you really can't figure it out with your wife, with your husband, how you're going to discipline your kid, first, you're going to want to check the Bible. The Bible is clear. The beginning of knowledge is fear of the Lord, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. If you want knowledge, you go to the Bible. You bended knees, you go and you pray, and then you seek outside help, professional help. Like I had a husband one time come to me and says, oh, Amanda, I wish my wife, she could just listen like you. And, he just kept saying all these things. And I thought, man, can you imagine if this husband was saying this to a coworker, saying this to another woman? Oh, I wish my wife was just like you and could listen to you. He would have put himself in a vulnerable situation. He would have opened the doors, the floodgates to making him vulnerable to an affair. But right, because I'm one step ahead of the game here, because I know that these things can happen during sessions. I looked to the husband and said, listen, buddy, you're paying me for this. And it sort of snapped him out of it. He realized what he said was inappropriate. But I wonder if this would have been different in a different setting. So make sure you're getting the appropriate help. Don't just badmouth your spouse. If you're going to go talk to someone to better your relationship, someone who is for your relationship, not someone who's trying to cause a wedge between you and your spouse. Go to Genesis 27. There's an interesting story there. And this is just a prime example of husband and wife not being on the same page, and it caused disaster to their family. Genesis, we're going to pick it up 27. Let's see, Genesis 27. This is the story of when Isaac, he blesses Jacob instead of Esau. So remember, Isaac is married to Rebekah. He is getting old, and so now is the time to give the firstborn son his blessing. Sure, the second one would have a blessing also. Remember that Esau and Jacob, they were twins, but one was born right before the other, and it would still make him the oldest, Esau. But here's the thing, the father loved Esau, the Bible tells us, and Rebekah, the mother, loved Jacob. Rebekah knew from an angel that Jacob would be greater than Esau, but Rebekah tries to manipulate, control the situation, and she tries to do for God what God said that he was going to figure out. And so you have Rebekah here who ultimately convinces Jacob, the younger son, to lie to the father so that he could get the blessing over Esau. And so I'm going to pick it up right in verse 1. I'm not going to read the full thing. You can fully read Genesis 27 on your own. But it says this. Now it came to pass when Isaac was old, his eyes were so dim that he could not see. He called Esau, his older son, and said, My son. He answered, Here I am. Behold, now I am old. I do not know the day of my death. Now therefore, please take your weapon, your quiver, and your bow, and go out to the field and hunt game for me. So essentially the father says, hey, you're a great hunter. You make excellent food. So go out there, hunt an animal, make food, come to me. We're going to eat together, and I'm going to give you the firstborn blessing. Rebekah hears about this, and Rebekah's like, not on my watch. You're going to give the blessing to Jacob, the younger son. And so Rebekah, listening in on this, she hurries, runs to Jacob and says, listen, Jacob, your father is about to give your brother the blessing, but no, he needs to give it to you. And Jacob's like, Mom, Dad is going to know that it's me. As soon as I speak, Esau had a thicker, manly voice. And Jacob's like, listen, look, I don't have not one hair on my chest. My brother's hairy. My dad is going to know that I'm Jacob. And she's like, I got it all planned out. She goes, listen, I know the type of food that your dad likes, that Esau makes, so I'm going to make the food. What we're going to do is we're going to get the skin of an animal, and I'm going to cover you up. I'm essentially going to clothe you with animal skin. And, Esau smells like a wild animal because he's always out there hunting. And we're going to put all this hair on you, so you're going to feel like your brother, you're going to smell like your brother, you're going to bring the food in, you're just not going to sound like him, but don't worry, it's going to be a 3 for 4 here. And so it goes back and forth where Jacob and his mother are planning this whole thing out, and then Jacob finally presents himself before his father, and his father's thinking, man, that was quick, you hunted, you made the food, that was quick, right? And really, little does he know, because he's blind, right? He can barely see. Little does he know that this is Jacob disguised as Esau. Esau is still hunting. He has no idea what's going on. So look, let's pick it up in verse 12. It says this. This is Jacob speaking. Perhaps my father will feel me, and I shall seem to be a deceiver to him, and I shall bring a curse on myself and not a blessing. This is Mom. But his mother said to him, let your curse be on me, my son. Only obey my voice and go get them for me. Do you see where a parental crisis is going on? Do you see where Mom is going against Dad? It's insanity. It's insanity. Well, long story short, he covers himself up. He goes and presents himself to his father. 3 times his father's like, wait, are you sure you're Esau? Are you my firstborn? And Jacob is saying, yes, I'm really him. I'm really him. Look at the last time in verse 24. And then he said, are you really my son Esau? And he said, I am. They go back and forth. Are you sure? Are you him? Are you him? Isaac is having his doubts. He's confused because he smells like him. He feels like him, but he's not talking like him. Until eventually he gives the blessing to Jacob. A few hours later, Esau comes in and says, hey, Dad, I'm ready for my blessing. And Isaac is saying, oh, man, There's nothing I could do now, son. I gave it to your brother. Please, Dad, give me something. I gave it all to your brother, though. And sure enough, Esau and obviously is angry. He's furious. He wants to kill his brother. And it's such a sad ending to this story. The family is completely broken apart. Rebecca would no longer see her son. Jacob had to run away. Look at the disaster, parental crisis. The Bible doesn't go into detail about what happens between Rebecca and Isaac, but we can imagine that the story doesn't end well for them either. Can you imagine? And so we need to be careful with the marriage pattern having parental crisis. The next one, the unskilled marriage. The unskilled marriage. Look, most marriages could have very satisfying results. Husband and wife could be living abundant marriage, but here's the thing. Unfortunately, husband and wife remain clueless as to how they can go from mediocre to abundant, which is why you're here, right? If you are in this live right now, or maybe if you're watching me after this live has been filmed already, the unskilled marriage, you should not have this as an excuse. Right now, you are having the opportunity to have a skilled marriage. Part of abundant marriage, we work with 5 pillars. It's character. We work on your character first, because usually half the problem in your marriage is not your spouse, it's you. Half the problem in my marriage is not Renee's fault, it's me. And if Renee thinks the same way, guess what? We're going to have an abundant marriage, because we are going to make sure that we are focusing on us. So look, character, covenant, which is basically commitment, communication, compassion, compromise. I teach you, I take you step by step, not only through these lives, but through the abundant marriage course. All of the couples go through these 5 pillars in great detail with activities and worksheets and Zoom lives, and we get together and we wrestle with one another. And unskilled marriages become skilled marriages. As I had a wife who recently went through the program, the course, she said, Amanda, I didn't think there was anything wrong with me. I thought all the problem was in my husband, but I soon realized that I had a problem with my communication style. She realized that one of her horsemen and her communication style was that she was super uber critical of her husband, that she would approach him in such a critical way, pointing out his flaws and his errors, and that immediately he would either stonewall, ignore her, or he would become defensive. And so as soon as she learned, as soon as her marriage became a skilled marriage and she realized, that's what I'm doing, that she no longer spoke to him in a critical way. And guess what? His walls came down. Now he was listening to her, and this is all she wanted. She wanted him to listen, but she was speaking to him in a way that would make him shut down. Poor marital and relational skills leave both parties feeling disconnected and leaves marriages vulnerable to an affair. Poor marital skills can be easily corrected if both of you are willing to learn. If both of you are willing to take the time, watch the videos, do the activities, do the course, and make sure your unskilled marriage becomes a skilled marriage. All right, what's the next one here? The next one here, oh man, the inflexible marriage. Look, quick recap. We have the child-centered marriage that leaves you vulnerable to infidelity. We have the parental crisis where mom and dad, they are not on the same page at all. We have the unskilled marriage, which is, hey, there are tools and resources that you could use, but you just don't know. But your marriage could be so much better if you just applied just these little changes. And now number 4, the inflexible marriage. Let me tell you something. If you get if you get a stick, if you get a stick and you snap it, it'll snap in half. There's no flexibility to it. Well, if you get a string, you can wiggle it all you want. You can turn it over. You can make a knot. You can make a braid. Strings are flexible. Well, in your marriage, while you should never be flexible with principles, you need to be flexible when it comes to preferences. And the other marital pattern, relational pattern, that makes you vulnerable to an affair is the inflexible marriage. Now look, life is full of transitions. Life is full of things that are unexpected. Take a look at us right now. We are going through, COVID. And if you are inflexible, you are not going to be able to navigate rough waters or smooth waters. At times, your marriage, at times, life cycles are like a roller coaster. It goes up and down, up and down. And unless you are flexible, you will become susceptible, vulnerable to an affair. Here's the thing, when you get married, I remember Renee and I, when we got married, we created almost like unconscious like maps. Sort of like, this is your job, this is my job. You know, for example, I clean the bathroom, you vacuum the floor. There were a division of labor that was negotiated when you are newlyweds and when you become a couple, that as soon as the first child comes, it's like, I mean, they just ran havoc on your marriage. Things that were very easy for Renee and I, things that he did and I did, and I didn't have to remind him. And he, you know, when things as soon as River and Reed came and we were stretched thin, this is when we had to be more flexible with each other. This is when maybe we had to be okay at times with dirty dishes overnight or different things like that. This is when exhaustion took over and we were up all night at times with River and Reed. We had to be flexible. We needed to adapt. With the introduction of children, our increased demands and initial sort of demands, jobs, the labor negotiated well, it needs to be adapted. At times in the beginning, yeah, guess what? Mom seems to be overwhelmed. I often find that it's the case that when a baby comes in, mom has to wear so many more hats, and Renee was, as much as he was helpful, guess what? His boobs were useless. Okay, so mom has to really have a big portion of this. And so, of course, in the beginning, the division of labor almost seems a little one-sided. Renee did everything he could as he sat there watching me with his useless boobs, you know, as I had to feed River and Reed. So look, almost all marriages will experience the following sort of transitions: the birth of children, when children leave maybe to go to school, adolescence, teenage years, and then children leaving home to go to college, and then empty nest, you are now on your own, which is why all of these life transitions, they require for you to adjust. And if you have an inflexible marriage, you will create vulnerabilities. You will create blind spots that will make you and your marriage susceptible to an affair. Okay, number 5, the broken marriage. Oh man, this one is tough. The broken marriage. What is this? This is when relational bonds, okay, are broken through misunderstanding or differences or failures or self-centeredness. Broken marriages are seen when spouses have a sort of unrealistic expectations. And here's what I mean by unrealistic expectations. You and your wife, you and your husband, you're different. And there are differences that attracted you to each other in the beginning that now are honestly a point of conflict. So instead of appreciating differences, you guys start to go at each other's throats. Okay, I know for this week, I was giving Renee a hard time because Renee and I are very different. Okay, Renee is very calculated. Renee thinks a lot before he does things or says things, and I'm just boom, 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 boom. Okay, Renee and I like to do CrossFit. We like to do Olympic lifts, and sure enough, I'm sort of the pick this rock and put it over here. Renee will just do it so gracefully, and he has technique, and he has better form. And sure enough, this is something that I admire in Renee, because you better believe that he is the finance guy. Renee will know if I spent, 50 cents at the nearest 7-Eleven, Renee will know. And I love that about him because he's organized and he's consistent and he's reliable. But it also drives me crazy because the other day, literally, I was putting gas in the car. Okay, he's gonna roll his eyes when I tell you this story. Renee was in the back seat with River and Reed because if something is gonna give me anxiety, it's sitting in the back seat with River and Reed. They hate the car. They hate car rides. I hate car rides, and they feel confined in the chair, and they want to get out, and I want to get out, and they don't stop crying. It drives me insane. And so I say, Renee, I need to drive. You go in the back with the zoo. And so Renee's back there, and we had to stop to put gas, and I'm putting gas, And I already know. Renee just starts looking over at me, and he's feeling a little impatient because as I'm putting the gas, it keeps clicking, and I keep trying to like stop it on, those, it has like two little like knobs or whatever, and so I stop it on the second, it keeps clicking. I stop it on the first, it keeps clicking. It goes a little bit, but then it like stops and starts, and Renee's like, let me put the gas. Let me do it, Amanda. Let me show you how to do. And I was like, wait, Renee, are you telling me that I don't know how to put gas? And so Renee always, which is true, he does always have a better way of doing things than I do. But I told Renee, you are limited to one correction a day, okay? And so the other day he was telling me that I was blending the smoothie incorrectly. And I know Renee, and I know his heart, and I know he's trying to be helpful. But I told him, I said, sometimes you're going to drive me crazy, so back off. And so we need to make sure that the very things that attracted me to Renee, that I admire Renee, sometimes it drives me crazy. But the misunderstanding, the differences, the temperament differences, I did a live recently on temperament differences, and so check it out. Make sure you watch that. So look, the one thing I want to point out here, Dr. Shirley Glass, right, that I've been speaking about, who wrote the book Not Just Friends, and who talks about affairs and these three factors: relational, individual, and social factors. She did a question and answer, and I'm going to read it to you guys because it's pretty interesting. Because look at what she says. The question was, can all relationships be fixed after an affair? That was the question. And look at how Dr. Glass answers. She goes, no. And then she explains. What I look for is how the unfaithful partner shows empathy for the pain that they have caused, and when the betrayed spouse starts acting crazy. So look at the first thing she knows. She goes, look, I would like for all marriages to be able to fix themselves, but the answer is no. Not all marriages, all relationships can be fixed after an affair. And she says no for reasons that I know that if we fix these reasons, that, and she also believes that God could restore these marriages. So broken marriages do not need to remain broken, but this is the secret to making sure that they're not broken. Look at what she says. They have to show empathy, number one. And she goes, and empathy for the pain that they have caused when the betrayed spouse starts acting crazy. And then the guy asking the question, I don't know his name, he says, well, in what way do they act crazy? And Dr. Glass goes, well, they're very emotional. Obviously, you've just been cheated on. They're very emotional. They cry easily. Their emotions are flip-flop. They're hyper-vigilant. They want to look at their phones. They have flashbacks. Sometimes they could be in the car listening to country music, and they'll start crying and accusing. So she sort of says that they just go through this, what she described as like post-traumatic stress, right? It's a traumatic event. And she goes, although these are common, post-traumatic reactions to infidelity, their behavior is very erratic and upsetting to them and their partner. Look at the secret, how much compassion the partner has for his partner is the benchmark. Another sign of salvageability lies in how much responsibility the unfaithful partner is willing to take for the choice they made, regardless of problems that pre-existed. In other words, she goes like this. The pattern of a broken... Renee's telling me to shift. The pattern of broken marriages make you susceptible to divorce because there's misunderstanding, there's differences, there's failures. Now, if this broken marriage goes through... if cheating has taken place, if an affair has taken place, and then the question was, well, can all relationships be fixed after an affair? And she goes, no. And the reason why she answered no is because if the unfaithful spouse does not take responsibility, and if he is not empathetic, then it cannot work. However, if he takes responsibility or she takes responsibility, and if they show empathy through this sort of period of trauma, of post-traumatic stress disorder, then absolutely it can be saved. Empathy and responsibility. Look at what she ends up by saying. Sometimes the unfaithful partner really doesn't regret the affair because it was very exciting. Obviously, if you have just taken part in an affair, right? And you're not regretful, you're not taking responsibility, you're blaming your spouse. Oh, well, I got an affair because of you, because you made me do this and you made me do that. Remember, none of this is an excuse for you cheating. There are people in worse marriages than you, and they have not cheated. So, yes, it makes you more vulnerable and it makes you more susceptible, which is why we are working on it. But in the end of the day, it is your choice. All right, we have 2 more to go. We're pretty good on time. Number 6, the imbalanced marriage. The imbalanced marriage. Look at this. Marital imbalances comes in many forms. Oftentimes, there is one who is underachieving and there is one who is overachieving. There is one who was overinvested and there is one who is underinvested. And both spouses will start to notice. And it seems to be the case that the one who is investing, the one who is committed, they are safeguarded against affairs, cheating, infidelity, however you want to call it. Okay? When you underinvest, when you are not intentional, when you are copping out, when you're taking the easy way, when you're letting your husband or your wife take care of everything, you are more susceptible to an affair. The imbalanced marriage makes you more susceptible. You know, I'm sorry to say, the wife who is washing dishes by herself, taking care of the kids, reading bedtime stories, also working, cleaning the house, and the husband, he just has a green pass to do whatever the heck he wishes. You are more susceptible, husband. It needs to be shared equally. Granted, there are some things that Renee will be able to do better than me and that I'll be able to do better. There are different traits that as a mom, I'm going to pass to River and Reed, but as a dad, Renee's going to have to pass. And we split it up fairly nicely. Renee, every single night, I'll go there and we'll say goodnight and we'll give them kisses, but Renee is responsible. He is the leader of this house. He is the spiritual leader. He is responsible then to go and play with River and Reed and sing to them, and he prays with them, and this is his moment with the boys. Renee, you know what also is his job? Renee is the smoothie king. Remember, since I don't know how to make smoothies apparently, Renee makes the boys smoothies. River and Reed know that Papa makes the best smoothie. So there are things that Renee does with River and Reed, and sometimes he takes them out of my hair so that I can just relax and just cool down, and vice versa. There's no sort of imbalances. We all work together. There was a wife in the book Not Just Friend by Dr. Shirley Glass. She wrote there a letter. There was a wife who was being overworked. Her husband was checked out. She had to do everything. They lived in a farm, it seemed, and she had to take care of everything, the food and the kids and cleaning the animals. She did it all. And the husband, all he did was work, and it made him susceptible because he wasn't investing in his family. He was underinvesting. He wasn't intentional. And so look at the letter she writes, and I thought it was brilliant. I love this letter. Look at this. The imbalanced marriage. Husband, is not doing his part. And so the wife writes him a letter. Look at what she says. Dear Luther, I looked upon our love as a nice, comfortable, burning ember after the blaze dies down, but you have stomped on it with both feet. If you want to keep my fire from being totally extinguished, you better start fanning the embers. Look at her. She says, listen, our love, right? We have like a fire. You're not going to let the fire burn out. At times, it's going to, the flames are going to be roaring and it's going to be awesome. The newlywed, the beginning of marriage, when the kids come, Lord have mercy. It's like kids throw water on your fire. But we have to keep the embers alive. We have to go to the fire every so often and fan it, blow on it, take care of it. And so look at what Lois is saying. She's like, listen, buddy, you better start fanning the embers. She continues, you may be thinking, I can't be serious, but I have never felt so strongly about anything in my life. I am tired of being the only one who is giving, so you better start giving too. Pretend, look at what she said, pretend I'm one of your girlfriends, not just your wife who will always be there, because I won't be. She goes, listen, if you're not fanning the embers of this fire, buddy, if you're underinvesting and I overinvesting, if you don't start treating me like when I was your girlfriend, if you don't start treating me like I will walk out Let me tell you something. I'm not the wife who will always be here because she won't treat me like the girlfriend who says, you know what, I'm sick of this, I'm leaving. Look at what she says. If you want to stay in the race with me, you better start running because I am tired of carrying a full load. This is a brand new marathon. Look, she's giving another chance. She wants him to run this race with her. But what she doesn't want to do is run alone. This is a brand new marathon, she says, and I want you to show me it's worth my time to stay in it. I refuse to run myself ragged anymore without active participation from you. I really want to go the whole 26K with you. I'll be at the finish line waiting for you. It's in your hands, and you, not me, are going to have to go for the gold medal. If not, I'll have to start a new race without you on my team. I love you. I want it to be you, Lois. Listen. The imbalanced marriage is a marriage that also is not Christ-centered. And the reason I say that is because Jesus says that he came to serve, not to be served. If we spend time with Jesus, we will have the hearts of a servant. My prayer daily is that how can I serve Renee? How can I serve my children? How can I serve our family? Not only in big things, but in the small tasks. Hey, wives, I know sometimes our jobs get overlooked. You know, no one is applauding us when we're washing dishes or cleaning up throw up. And I know husbands also, your jobs can be overlooked. But if we come together with the spirit of service and say, how can I do? How can I help? How can I make your life easier? If both parties are saying this, never should a Christian marriage be imbalanced because the love of Christ would should create the heart of service. All right, here's the last one. We're going to land this plane. I think I'll even finish 5 minutes earlier, Renee. What do you think? A miracle, he says. Let's see if I can split the Red Sea for Renee this evening. Look, the last one. The intimacy avoidant marriage. When I talk intimacy, I want it to be very clear that I'm talking sex. Absolutely, boys, I got you. But I'm also talking about emotional intimacy. If I were to ask you, hey, would you rather the left wing of your plane or the right wing of a plane? We are going to Hawaii. You know, pack your bags, put your family in the plane. But here's news. We can only have one wing. So would you want the left or the right? You'd look at me and say, you're insane. Let me walk my butt off of this plane. I'm not going anywhere with only one winged plane. Well, exactly. The intimacy avoidant marriage, it's either avoiding emotional intimacy or physical intimacy. Boys need sex. Wives, do they need it also? Absolutely. But wives, we're sort of more tickled, let's say, by emotional intimacy. Okay? Renee and I can have a bad fight, and come in the end of the night, if I say, hey, you want to have sex? He'll say, wait, what were we fighting about? It's like he has amnesia. He won't even remember. Okay? If we fight all day and Renee says, do you want to have sex with me? I'm going to tell him in a very not nice way to get out of here, right? I'm going to say, have you lost your mind? Go kick rocks. I'm not going to have sex with you, right? And so women and men are very different. I've already shared research with you that says that 95% of sex for women happen between the years, right? It happens in our mind. And so look, you need to make sure that both of these things are existing in your marriage. You need to have emotional intimacy. You need to have physical intimacy. Boys, you need to sit there. You need to hear her. I know she talks a lot. Look at how much I talk now. You honestly think Renee can get a few words every once in a while? I say a novel before he says a few words. And then sometimes I ask him, I talk, and I ask him a question. And he'll look off into the space, and he'll look at the stars, he'll look at the moon, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like waiting, and I'm waiting. I'm thinking like, this is gonna be good, right? He's thinking so long and hard about this answer. It's gonna be like amazing. And then he looks at me, and then I think he's finally gonna say something, and then he starts thinking again, and then he comes back and he says, let me think about that a little longer, and I'll get back to you later. He said, are you kidding me? He's laughing because he knows it's true. I'll ask Renee a simple question, and after 5 minutes of like looking out into space, he literally replies with, let me think a little longer. It drives me insane. Okay? But guess what? Renee says less nonsense than I do because I talk. I should probably think a little bit more before I speak. I usually get into more trouble. So here's the thing. Wives like to talk. Renee's a great listener. And I also want to make sure that I'm meeting his needs and my needs, the needs of our marriage, okay? I want to share with you something here from affairrecovery.com. It's a great little website. I love going and seeing their stuff. And he gives a hypothetical situation. Look at what I forget his name, the guy who does the website. He says this: here's a hypothetical situation to help explain intimacy. Look at how he's explaining intimacy. If I were to be intimate with Stephanie is his wife, and tell her I used a pornography website, do you think my honesty with Stephanie will make us close in that moment? So what the author is trying to explain to you is the difference between intimacy and closeness. Closeness is not like Renee is sitting next to me and we're watching a movie together, right? Well, yes, we are physically close, but intimacy goes one step further. Intimacy is about vulnerability. It's about honesty. It's about showing your raw and vulnerable self. And so obviously, if he tells his wife, Stephanie, hey, I was watching pornography, it's not going to make them closer to each other. But look at this. Absolutely not, he says. In that moment, she's not going to want to be closer to me. She's going to want to be distant from me. We're not going to be close. He goes, but when things calm down and she still chooses to be with me and love me, our marriage is stronger than ever. I now know that she loves me unconditionally for who I am rather than for who she thinks I am. My honesty with her, even when I know it's something she doesn't want to hear, leaves her feeling more secure because she knows I'm going to be real and authentic with her. Now, in no way is he excusing pornography, okay? Pornography is absolutely cheating on your spouse. But what he's saying is if he falls, if he sins, intimacy requires him to go to his wife and say, hey, honey, I messed up. And in return, if she says, listen, I'm obviously upset, I'm frustrated, this kind of messed up my trust with you, this is going to mess up our relationship, but if you confessed, and as the Bible says, if you're willing to forsake, I'm going to be here to help you. As I had a wife do with a husband recently, during here, her husband was struggling with pornography and she stayed and she said, I'm going to help you with this and I'm going to be your accountability partner. You know what that happened? In the moment they were in close, obviously she was upset, she cried, she was angry, but guess what? It brought greater intimacy to their relationship. So intimacy, don't think about it in terms of closeness, in terms of physical closeness, but in terms of like heart searching, in terms of taking off the mask, showing your real self to your spouse, all the ugliness and the sin and the vulnerability. And when they choose you, and obviously you also have to choose to change and get better, this will create greater intimacy in your relationship. Renee, look, I'm done. All I have to do now is this, what I promised you. Renee is going to put the link there. Oh man, 6 minutes to spare. Renee is going to put the link there. Here's another quiz. Remember, part 1 had the social factor quiz to see if you were vulnerable. Today we talked about are you vulnerable to an affair? And we looked at relational, marital patterns that can make your marriage more susceptible, vulnerable to an affair. So now you get to take the quiz, the relational vulnerability quiz. Now look, it's important to realize that your relationship vulnerability score is not the predictor of infidelity. Remember, there are 3 factors. This is only 1. So if anything, your marital pattern is only 1/3 of the problem. So we have to make sure we fix all of them, which is why it's important that you watch parts 1, 2, and 3. Now look, even if a score indicates high vulnerability in this specific area, it does not mean that infidelity is inevitable. Just as there are happy married couples who are unfaithful, there are also many dissatisfied marital patterns, married couples who don't cheat. Okay? The relational vulnerability map, guys, is one component that should be considered alongside with the individual and also the social vulnerability factors. Look, I'm done. So if you got that link there, click it, do it individually, share the answers with your spouse, have an intimate conversation about it. All right? I hope that was helpful to you guys. And I can't wait for part 3 as we will discover the individual factors. All right, guys, take care. See you next. Oh, one more thing. Look at this. We are changing. So this is the big change that I want you guys to remember. We are no longer going to be doing Friday nights at 8:30. It's tough on everyone's schedule, and it's the start of the weekend, and, all sorts in that. And so we've actually decided that we are going to change our lives to Thursdays at 8:30. So same time, We're just changing the date. I hope it's helpful to you guys, for you guys. And that way, Friday night you can just, zone out and enjoy the weekend to come. So next week, Thursday, 8:30, same place. See you guys.